Hello, welcome everybody to our webinar on JFrog Mission Control. That's me, Baruch. I'm a developer advocate with JFrog. I'm going to show you our new and exciting product. We are extremely excited about it. We only released new products. We only did it actually twice, that's the third time, and here at JFrog, and we are of course very excited about it. A couple of housekeeping items before we start. First of all, you are all on mute to ensure the audio quality. Now you can ask any questions during the webinar by typing them into the chat window. I will take them from there towards the end of the demo. Toward the end of the webinar, you will get the recording tomorrow, hopefully, or the day after, in a couple of days. And you will also, after the webinar will finish, you will be forwarded to a window in which, after answering a brief survey, you will be able to get a JFrog Mission Control t-shirt. So don't skip that part as well. I think that's all. So let's look at our today's agenda. That's what we should talk about today. We are talking about what JFrog is, and what our solution is today. What we learned from our most scaled users, the biggest users that we have, which problems they have, and how our new mission control can help. And then, of course, we will see a demo, and we'll speak a little bit about what we plan next, and hopefully we will have a lot of questions on Q&A. Let's start with a brief survey about how you use Artifactory. That will help me understand where we are standing and what should we talk about during the demo. Let's take a couple of seconds more, and then we will be able to understand it. Alright, so I think I got the picture, and I believe you can see the answers as well. Most of you run multiple HA instances. Some of you run multiple Pro instances, and some people run single instances of Pro and open source. And I will talk about the usage of any of them a little bit later, and how can you benefit, each one of you, based on your setup, from the mission control, of course. But first, let's talk a little bit of what we are trying to achieve and how we are doing that. So the motto of JFrog is release fast or die. And that actually means that our mission is to help organizations to release the software as fast as possible on multiple levels. We are talking about developers being able to push their changes as fast as possible to production, operations to be able to provision changes to production as fast as possible, and on the company level, on the organizational level, being able to use the competitive advantage and be able to release as fast as possible. And currently we do it with our two existing solutions. JFrog Artifactory and JFrog Bintray. When JFrog Artifactory is of course, the binary repository that you all know and use, and Bintray is our distribution platform, and they of course build a solution for your release and delivery pipeline. But what we learned is that really big organizations, really big customers and users of ours have their own set of qualities that only mandate themselves at, I would say, at a big scale. So what you see here is actually a quote from Stalin: "Quantity has quality of its own." Talking about the original quote, it was a little bit less flattering. What he actually meant is quantity instead of quality. That's not, of course, what we are talking about. We are talking about the fact that on some level, other features become important and other problems arise, etc., etc. And we know it from you, our users, of course. You can see that JFrog interacts with 7 out of 10 largest telecoms, 7 out of 10 largest financial companies, 8 out of 10 largest internet and software companies. So we actually know what it takes to create a very large continuous integration and delivery pipelines. And here you can see a slide that is from the keynote from Oracle on the last year's JFrog user conference, the Swamp Up, when the speaker presented the scale of Oracle, of Artifactory at Oracle back then. You can see here the numbers are solid. We are talking about more than 40 million artifacts. We are talking about more than almost 130 gigabytes, reasonably large traffic of 26 million requests per day, and the installation across 5 data centers across the world. So that's a good. Those are good numbers, and that's a relatively big installation. And that, of course, creates a whole new set of challenges that only mandate themselves at this scale. So, for example, we are talking about knowing what's out there. We have a lot of repositories. We need to understand what they are, how they work, and what are the relationships among them. And those repositories, they will almost sure be remote from each other. That's because locality is a big deal for distributed teams, and organization provides a separate repository for each and every site, probably a cluster of repositories for each and every site, and that of course create a managing challenge for managing those repositories and knowing what's going on there. Another problem is security. When we are talking about huge teams, we are talking about developers joining the teams and leaving the teams on a daily basis, and being able to provision changes for those users in a global scale is also a very, very big deal. And high reliability. So HA is not new for Artifactory users, but multiple HA sites with complex relationships between them, like multi-push replication, is a challenge as well. So we are talking about challenging setups for managing challenging scales. And we believe that JFrog Mission Control 1.0 or JFrog Mission Control in general is the solution for this problem. And JFrog Mission Control 1.0, the version that we are talking about today, and the version that I'm going to present you today, is actually the beginning of the solution for that problem. So we try to answer 4 different questions: knowing what's out there, understanding how to maximize productivity, and centralized management, the provisioning, and the entitlements, of course, the security and the users, and monitoring the clusters to ensure that they are always up. That's what we're trying to achieve. And we are going to talk about how can we do it with different types of Artifactory instances, with different licenses, etc., etc. very soon. And Mission Control is an addition to our big picture of continuous integration and continuous delivery. So probably if you work with Artifactory for a while and you know Artifactory, you should be very familiar with the flow that you see on this diagram when developers work with Artifactory, both when they run local builds and the CI server works with Artifactory when running the continuous integration builds, the metadata that being gathered from different places, and then of course the rollout for a production or on the rolling out on production servers using automation tools, or rolling out for distribution on a distribution platform such as Bintray or Organizational Download Center. In any way, Artifactory here serves as what we call the system of record. It gathers all the information about your artifacts from any step inside the continuous integration delivery pipeline, and then you use this information that's inside Artifactory for taking the decisions when you deploy to production, or for triaging problems and incoming artifacts that you need to understand what the root of those artifacts are. So being the system of record, the importance of Artifactory is, of course, cannot be ignored, and Mission Control is something that allows you management capabilities and monitoring capabilities on those Artifactory instances is really really important. And here, before I go any further, I would like to show you some demo of Mission Control. That's really what we are here for. So let me just share my screen and we will talk about Mission Control and what it does. That should be that screen. And what you should see now is the homepage of Mission Control, which looks pretty much the same as a dashboard of Artifactory, with one important difference. What you see here are instances of Artifactories which are connected to Mission Control. And you can see here that I have 3 online Artifactory instances: Artifactory 1, Artifactory 2, and Artifactory 3. What I'm going to do now is take one of them down, just for the sake of showing you how instance go down and Mission Control can see it. So I will stop Artifactory 1. Okay, now it will go down. In the meanwhile, In the meanwhile, what we are going to do is connect a new server. So here I have another server that is not connected to the mission control yet, and that's actually an HA instance. Let's log in and verify that we are talking about the HA instance. So here we can see that we are talking about HA with two instances, and I'm going to take this URL and connect it to our mission control. Here we have our mission control, and yeah. So, oh, by the way, here we go. Dashboard Artifactory 2 went down, and as you can see now, it's offline. Let's bring it up. And let's connect a new instance. So dashboard, it's a high-level picture of all Artifactory instances. Let's look at the view. So the view, it's an instance browser. You can see here a filterable list of all your instances, and then you can look at any particular instance and see what's its status. So that's the instance that is coming up now. It will take a second. For a while it's an error state, and here are the other instances that we have, Artifactory 1, 2, and 3. Let's connect a new one. I will click to add instance. The name will be whatever I like it to be, and the URL will be the URL of the instance. I have to provide, of course, with admin a username and password to provide a management of this instance, and now I have it installed. So now I can see here this instance is being installed, and for instances that were never connected to a mission control, there is additional step, and that's what we call upload extensions. You will get a warning that this instance doesn't have the control instructions that needed, and you can actually go and click this button to upload the extensions. Those extensions are just bunch of Artifactory user plugins that expose additional REST interfaces which are not available through a normal REST API, and that's for the sake of managing, for managing instances through mission control. For example, we don't have REST API to upload new repository layouts, to put repository layouts. So for the sake of mission control, we created a user plugin for adding repository layouts, and this user plugin is deployed to the target Artifactory instance by running this action of upload extensions. You can always go to the target Artifactory instance, etc plugins, and see the plugins that were installed. So now we have multiple Artifactory instances, and let's see what they're capable of doing. What do you actually see? So here's Artifactory 1, so you can see the status, the name, the URL, and the version, of course. And in the repositories, you can see the filterable list of all the repositories that exist. Snapshots, here are all my snapshot repositories. I will get to the connections in a bit. System info is the system and the environment variable. You can see here general information about the machine, like the heap size, architecture, and the name of the operation system, the version of the operation system, etc., etc. Information about the user on the machine, and all the Artifactory system properties. They are all listed here as well. License, that's also very, very important tab. It allows you to see the validity and the type of licenses, so you won't miss any invalidation of licenses because of type. And in the HA, you can see the HA setup of this machine. And let's look at the HA machine for the HA instance. And here you can see all the HA instances in the cluster, so you know that everything is up and running. Back to the Connections tab. Connection tabs show you the connections between your managed Artifactory instances, as long as both sides of the connections are monitored with Mission Control. So you can see here that Artifactory 1 has one connection to Artifactory 3, and it's actually configured with multi-push, and that's the same multi-push not only goes to Artifactory 3, but also goes to Artifactory 2. You can see here how it's configured from Artifactory 1 to Artifactory 3 and to Artifactory 2 as well. And you can see here a bunch of others, including full replication, including remote repositories, etc., etc. So this is very nice and graphical way to show connections between your servers. Another viewing only screen is the monitor. At the moment, it just gives you the overview of the instances that are running, pretty similar to what you have in the dashboard, but we have very extensive plans for this screen. We really want to provide here a monitoring, deep monitoring tools for the instances that you actually need. But still, here it's a very nice overview of your status and the license that you have here. Those three screens, the dashboard, the view, and the monitor, actually allow you to view and monitor any type of Artifactory with any type of license. It will work for Pro instances, it will work for open source instances, and it will give you all the information about them as well. The only thing that is limited to our HA customers is the ability to manage Artifactory instances, and that's of course what we are going to talk about now. So generally, even if you are not an enterprise customer of JFrog and you don't have the enterprise license, you can still benefit from Mission Control by monitoring your instances. And of course, it makes sense if you have more than one instance, and it's got more and more interesting as more instances you have. So back to the survey results that we spoke earlier, the users that have multiple Pro instances can definitely see the value of managing those instances with Mission Control. Users with a single instance, it's good to know that Mission Control exists. I'm sure you will have more in time, and then of course Mission Control can help you manage all of them. Monitor all of them. Now let's talk about managing. So in managing, you can see here that you can monitor, you can manage at the moment again 3 different aspects of your Artifactory instances. The instance itself, general things about them, and we're going to see what we can do with instances. Repositories, you can add repositories or update existing repositories, and security, under which you can create user, update user, create group, update group, and create and manage permissions as well, and we're going to do so as well. Before we are diving into doing those operations, let's look for a second on Mission Control settings. So here, those are the settings of Mission Control itself. We are going to get back to roles in a second. Groups allow you to group Artifactory instances for easier manipulation. So we have those 3 instances which run on my Docker machine, and then another one which is not. So let's create a group, local Docker. That will be my group, and we will take 3 of them and add to that group. So here we have our new group, and getting back to view, you will see here that now they are grouped together in my group. And when we are going to manage them, we will be able to manage them together in a single group. Users, we can add more users to use Mission Control itself. So if you want to provide additional people with their own usernames, passwords, to be able to analyze the logs and understand who did which operation, we can do it here. And if the connection from the Mission Control to different Artifactory instances requires proxy or multiple proxies, you can configure them here, and then when you add a new instance to Mission Control, you can select from one of the proxies that are configured here. Now let's get back to roles. Mission Control takes the configuration as a code approach. That's a classical DevOps approach that you can see in most of the configuration and provisioning tools, such as Chef, Puppet, Ansible, SaltStack, etc., etc., Docker, of course, as well. And we are talking about writing code that will change configuration instead of going through clicking checkboxes or buttons on a screen. The term for those configuration snippets, code snippets, role is taken from Chef for that regard, but role basically means that it's a configurable snippet of code that will run some kind of configuration on the machine itself. You can see in our user guide a detailed explanation about what roles are, how to get started with them, a couple of examples here, and explanation about partial versus complete roles, what is the user input, what types of user input available, etc., etc., the context variables that exist, and so on and so forth. You also have a very detailed configuration DSL documentation that explains what are the values that exist. What's important to be remembered that we are talking about code, and this example, it's a Groovy code, it's a DSL based on Groovy. That means that you can manipulate the code itself using the programming language. It's not limited to just using those as, I would say, as definitions. You can actually write code in it. And let me find an example here for you. That's something that is done by code. Give me a second. Yeah, here you go. So this role that you see here adds multi-push replication, but from all the peers that are available for configuration, we only care about those which have London in their location. And here you can see that you can actually run code. This is a Groovy method, find all, in which we find the instance that that only has a location in London. And of course, it's not limited to that. I will show you another example of such code in one of the roles that we're going to run. Those roles are, of course, reusable. We have a couple of examples in our GitHub. So JFrog Dev GitHub account have this Mission Control roles repository, and you can see here relatively small for now number, but a pretty good start for examples of roles. And of course, if you write role that you feel can be beneficial for others, please by all means share it with us through pull request to this repository. So you can see here some roles for instance manipulation, some roles for repository creation and updates, etc., etc. And a couple of roles from this repository I already configured in my Mission Control instance. So here I have a role that creates a property set on an instance. So you can see here, this is how it looks like. I just say that I want a property set that named QA, and it has three properties defined. Single select availability, from which you can select whether it's general, limited, or rollback. Multi-select from browser support, from which you can select whether it supports Chrome, let's just fix it on the way, Chrome, Internet Explorer, and Firefox, and another comments, open comments, which can be anything you like. So that's our role for QA property set, and now let's go apply it on instances. So I want to update an instance. I will select my group or particular instance for that matter. Let's select J's instance for applying the QA role, and now I'll hit continue. Here we need to select which roles I want to apply, and whichever roles for instance updating I have here, I can select them to be applied on this instance. Let's add that, and now that's the screen when, if I have some kind of user input, I will use it, and we will see it of course in other examples. Everything looks good. I'm going to update instance, and I'm going to create property set. I can execute that. It was a successful operation. I can retry in case there are some problems. I can go back in this browser and then change it and retry, or I can roll back this operation. Now let's see what actually happened. So here I have that's J's instance, and now I can go and see here in the property set that I have this new QA property set. Let's manually add it to one of the repositories for let's say lib snapshot local, and now in lib snapshot local here, lib snapshot local, in the properties I can use this property set, say that the availability is general and browser support whatever values are correct, and quality comments, which is open as well. So that was an easy take on changing multiple instances at once. Of course, changed only one, but now we will have how we do. I will show you how we do interesting stuff on multiple repositories as well. Let's go back to our role selection and see which additional roles we have here. And additional roles are repository roles. I also copy-pasted 3 of them from our GitHub repo. Create Maven snapshot local repo, create a remote repo, and multi-push. So let's look at the creating of a local repository here. So you can see the DSL. The repository name will be user input. I don't know what it will be. It will be string. We have a default value which is set to Maven snapshot local. And for the user input, the input prompt will be please provide a repository name. I'm going to create a local repository using this user input, and it will be Maven. It will handle snapshots, 1 handle releases. It will keep 5 unique snapshots, and the snapshot version will be unique. I also can add multiple partial roles to this complete role, and one of them will be adding multi-push to all the repositories that I create. So that's a partial role, and I know that it's partial because it is applied on the repository object. What I'm going to create here is a multi-push replication. Multi-push replication will be created to all the instances that I change during this operation. We will see it, of course, in the UI in a second. That's the cron expression, and I want it enabled. I want it to be event-driven and sync properties, but don't sync deletes. So let's try to do that. So let's go to manage again, repositories. Here are my repositories, and of course I need to create new repository. Now I want to create repository and multi-push replication to my local Docker group. So I only select a group, and all of them will be selected. What I want to do here is create you know what? Let's do it by instance, so it will be more graphical. So I select 3 instances, and now here I have applied to all 3 of them. What I want to do is create snapshot local repo for all 3 of them, and I want to do it in all 3 of my instances. So I'll add 3 of them. In addition, on Artifactory 1, I also want to create the multi-push replication. So I add that as well. I need to change the order, of course, because the multi-push should come after creating local snapshots. And now I will have my user input, in which I can set a different repositories name. So I can name them differently. For example, in Artifactory 1, I want to call it Maven Snapshot Local Master, because that will be the master from which it will have the multi-push replication to all the rest of them. And now continue. The summary says that I am actually going to create 3 repositories, each one of them. Let's execute. And all 3 of them are successful. Now let's see what happens. So we can start here, of course, in the view of the repositories. I can look at Artifactory 3 on the connections, and well, that's strange. Well, okay, it doesn't show it here. How about Artifactory 1 connections? Well, yes, here at least I have my Maven Snapshot Local test multi-pushed to Maven Snapshot Local on 2 Artifactory instances. So as you can see, we really did a very important step here. We managed to create multiple repositories in multiple instances and configure a replication in one go. It was a very simple way to do that. Now let's look at additional role, and that will be create matching remote repository snapshot. What I'm trying to do here is automatically create a remote repository by selecting a local repository in another instance. So the target will be a user input again, but it will give us a list of other repositories in other instances. And I will take the name of the repository that was selected and create a remote repository for it by using the URL of it as a URL for remote repository. And here you can see a little bit of Groovy code, and that's exactly what I mentioned when I said that that's actually an actual code, and you can do a pretty neat stuff by utilizing the full power of this programming language. And of course, it's Groovy, which makes it even more useful, especially for whoever knows Java. So now let's try to run that role. So we're going to create a new repository, and this new repository will be in Artifactory 3, and it will be a remote repository for Artifactory 1. So both instances will participate in this provisioning. I will select both of them. Now what I'm going to do is create a Maven remote snapshot. I'm going to create it in Artifactory 3. Artifactory 3, I need a repository in it. Now I have my user input, which shows me the list of the repositories from all the instances that I actually touch. And what I want to create is a remote repository for libs. Okay, I need a snapshot. For libs snapshot local. And this is a repository that I'm going to create a remote for it inside Artifactory 3. Now let's review. I'm going to create a repository on Artifactory 3, and of course I expect the repository to be called libs snapshots remote, and to the URL to set to libs snapshot local in Artifactory 1. Let's see how that works. So it's success. Let's go to Artifactory 3. That's Artifactory 3. Admin, repositories, remote, and here is my lib snapshot remote, which points to lib snapshot local in Artifactory 1. So that was very simple way to create another connection between the two repositories. And now, just before we finish, let's take a couple of minutes about talking about security. So on the security screen, you have a very familiar concept that you know from a single Artifactory instance, the users, the groups, and the permissions, and you can manipulate them in the same way with one very important difference, of course, that you actually do it on multiple instances. So let's create a user in all our instances, the local Docker group, and in Jay's machine as well. The username will be dev, the email will be dev@jfrog.com, the password will be password, of course, and I add a user to all of them. Continue, summary, yes, I want to create a user on all the 4 instances. And then I want a new permission for it, both in all of them. And now the permissions I want to run on all of the repositories. The name will be everything. And no groups. I want my new dev user to be able to do everything except of managing them, and execute all. Now let's go to Artifactory 2. We didn't visit this guy for a while, and under the security users, that's my dev user. They have the permission, and if I'm going to artifacts, leave snapshot local, effective permissions, my dev is capable of doing all the permissions that listed. We have about 10 minutes left, and I really will take a couple of them to talk about our vision and what we are going to do next, and then we have plenty of questions to talk about as well. So, a vision of JFrog Mission Control, the place that we want to take this tool is, of course, it's actually twofold. For the operations professionals, we want to give a very simple and powerful tool to manage multiple Artifactory instances. That's the demo. That's the demo that I showed you now, and of course a lot more to come, both on what roles can do, what they can manage, what they can change. For example, in this technology preview, we didn't include at all any ability to delete content from any Artifactory instance, and that's just to make sure that until we have a Mission Control generally available, we won't do any harm by deleting something that you didn't intend, and of course also options that you can actually configure through Mission Control itself. So it can be anything from adding a SMTP server to your Artifactory instance, and actually should cover all the configuration and administration options. And another, so it also includes, of course, working on the monitor screen and providing much more information for the instances monitor as well. Another, I would say, broader goal for the Mission Control is to provide IT and ops leaders, executive level, chief officer level, real-time visibility into what's going on in their development, distribution, and consumption of software packages inside their organization. And what we want to provide them is the same dashboard that their peers in other roles actually use. So, for example, director of sales have their own Salesforce dashboard. Director of marketing have their own Marketo or whatever marketing tools user dashboard. But the IT and ops leaders at the moment have to rely on stuff like burn down charts, which are very important, but they are by definition user driven or human inputted, right? So they ask the project leaders, the group leaders, the team leaders, and eventually the developers to monitor their own progress and feed those dashboards, which is of course important and extremely useful, but having something that provides an automatic overview on what's going on with the development, distribution, and consumption is extremely important as well. And we believe that having Artifactory and Bintray be controlled by the Mission Control we can build on top of it to provide those kinds of dashboards and those kinds of monitoring tools for the top tier management inside your organization. That's the big vision. And of course, another very important aspect of Mission Control is the price. Mission Control is absolutely free for any Artifactory user, including the open source, the pro, and of course the enterprise users. You have to remember, as I already mentioned, the most valuable features of Mission Control, all the management part of Mission Control are available for the customers with enterprise with enterprise licenses. So that concludes my presentation and my demo. And before we will get into questions, let me introduce Efrat, who is the product manager for Mission Control. Let me just try to add.
Hello. So now I'm sorry for the short delay. So as Baruch introduced me, my name is Efrat, and I'm the product manager for Mission Control. As you can see, we started. I'll go over a few questions that we got here. One of them is about to extend. Can we extend the capabilities of Mission Control ourselves? So the answer is currently yes, especially with the scripting, the DSL scripting code that Baruch just gave an example of. It's a very strong tool that we'll be able to use. We are planning to add more functionality as we go on. Other questions that we got here, importing the roles from the GitHub. This is something that we are thinking of currently. What's in the GitHub, you can just copy and paste to your own Artifactory. Another question we get here, it's about analytics. So right now we just have we have logs of the actions. Right now it's not like we're thinking for the future how we can elaborate more on that. But you can see which user commit each action, so you can learn who did each activity. About official release. So yes, right now what's available is a preview version, and we will update you shortly when we're going to have the official release. It's going to be pretty soon. Is there any more questions? I can see what's written here. But what I would like to take the opportunity to say is, first of all, thank you for reviewing and learning about Mission Control. And I will take the opportunity to approach probably each one of you and schedule a one-on-one session to see and to get your input about Mission Control, to hear more what you have to say. So that's it from our end. Thank you.